write a series of applications which would demonstrate what you learned in the previous semester. The first
Yes, sir.
application we are going to write has to do with us writing a simple application to calculate two numbers being added. So if I have two numbers and I want to add them up using Visual Basic, I would require um, this application and how will I design it? How will I build it out? So that is what we are going to review on. So to build an application like that, I require, first of all, me having an interface. So I'll have to design an interface like this, whereby I would have an area for the person to type the username, the number one, and another area for the person to type um, the password. And then we'll have another area where the individual, sorry, uh, what's going on? So copy paste. And then we'll have another area where the individual will have a place for the button in which you type sum to sum the things up. You also need a place where the individual can come and put in his number one, and then number two. And then we need another place whereby the person can come and display their answer.
Fine.
So over here we have this interface. And our job is to design this interface. And after we design the interface, then we would write the code for it. Now, I am sure you were told that there are, okay, so first of all, we have to design this interface. So obviously, I would come here, I would go and make sure I choose a Windows Form application. And I want to have it at Visual Basic. It should be the Windows and it should be desktop. And so I'm going to start myself a new application, whereby my new application will be in the form of what I'm going to call my new application addition app. Okay. And then in here, I'm just going to go to next. I'm going to hit on the button create. So now I have created my new application. I've created my new code where I'm coming to write my application and draw my application. It is very important that we have a layout. So this is how our work is going to look like. In here, we have the layout for our work. Now, obviously, we will start by going to the toolbox. From your previous lesson, you should know that the toolbox is where you can find all the components that are used to design the interfaces of our project. So in here, we have a label, and my label is going to be, oh, sorry, I have a label. And in order for me to change anything on these components, each one has a properties panel, which is specially configured for each and every single component. So in this case, I'll go for label. And in label, I'll go and look for the text property. I hope you've done this already, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll look for the text property, keeping in mind that the text property shows the property that the user will see. So any visual text that would appear on the user screen is the text property. In this case, I have number one over here. And then I'm going to just copy this so that I can turn this into my number two. And then I'm going to copy this, that I can turn it into my answer. Now, because my answer is going to be displayed by the user whenever the things are calculated, it is answer that is going to show what is being calculated. It means that over here, I need to provide answer with a name property. So remember, there is the text property and the name property. Who can tell me the difference between the text property and the name property? Who can tell me the difference between the name property and then the text property? By the way, and the other people are aware that the class is going on. Yes, I'm waiting to hear from you. What is the difference between the name property and the text property? Remember, you guys told me that last year you did all the theory. So all the theory in this world, you people know every single one. So what is the difference between the name property and the text property?
Sir, please, I think that the main property provides a place for you to get a name or a form, and a text property provides us with, let's say, windows.
Okay, so that is not true. The text property is the property in charge of display text. So anything you have on your screen, which you would see, is the text property. For example, this number one, number two, answer, I can see them because of the text property. The text property is what controls that. The name property is the system variable name given to the component. So, for example, this answer here, I'm going to give it a name property of LBL underscore answer. Now, this LBL underscore answer is the name that is given to the component answer one. So whenever I say LBL underscore answer, I am referring to this component over here. Now, this component over here is written in a particular programming language. I can go to view source, it's written in a particular programming language. Now, the action of it is written in VB, but the display of it is not written in VB. So whenever I say label underscore answer, I am referring to the VB name given to that component. It's very important we understand this, that each and every single element here has a name. That is the system name. You can see that when I did the number one and the number two, I left spaces in them. But when I did the system name, that is the name property, I said LBL underscore answer. I didn't leave any space in it. I didn't give any room for any space in it. So back in this code in which I have over here, now here I have LBL underscore. From our designing which we did, we saw that we have two text boxes over here. So of course, I'll come here and add a text box here and add another text box over here. I'm going to make sure the text boxes have a bit of a length. And then I'm going to add a button. So here I'm going to add a button. So here's my button. I'm going to put the answer over here so that it's in line with this. Tada. I'm going to copy everything here and bring it down a bit. Good. And then I'm going to make sure the size of my box is over here. Perfect. I'm going to click on my text box and I'm going to go to the properties panel and I'm going to give it a name property of txt underscore num1. And over here, I'll click on this one and give it a name property of txt underscore num2. And the button, I'm going to call it btn underscore show answer. Good. Now, over here, the name properties I've given to these are how I will refer to them inside the VS Code. Very important. So once I'm in the VS Code, whenever I say txt num1, I'm referring to this text box over here. When I say txt number 2, I'm referring to this text box over here. When I say btn show answer, I'm referring to this over here. When I say lbl underscore answer, I'm referring to this over here. So I have my code set for everything I want to do. Now I must write the actions that the code will perform. VB is an event-based language, which means that when I double click here, I am telling the computer that upon me double clicking the code over there, this is what I want to do. These are the actions I want to perform. These are the things I want to do. These are the actions my code should take into consideration and evaluate. So what do I want my code to evaluate? I want you to create a variable. So dim sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to make it bigger, but every time I try, it becomes smaller. Aha. Okay. Okay. So dim num1 as double. Dim num2 as double. And then dim sum as double. So over here, I've created variables to hold information. Now, this is the problem. The information in question is being held on the interface. If I run this application here, if I click the run button, it runs. There is no mistakes. On my screen, I have this window popping up here. If someone comes and types this here and types this here, so someone has typed 12 and 12 in the box over here. Once you type 12 and 12 in here, and I click submit, I'm supposed to see the answer. So when I click submit here, the codes which would precede the submit being clicked on is what I'm typing here. So I'm saying that before you do anything, create a place that you keep the first number the person typed, create a place that you keep the second number the person typed, and create a place that when you add the two things, you would keep the answer. Back to the designing which we did, remember, it is upon me clicking this. But the user didn't type the information here in num1, or did it type the information here in num2? The user typed the information inside the text box. Remember, we called this text box over here txt num1, and we call this one here txt underscore num2. So I have to tell the computer that take the information that you have in the text box and give it to num1. It's as clear as that. Now, how will I do that? In here, I'm going to say if double dot try pass. Now, this statement here is a very important statement. This statement here is asking me a question. It's performing a particular action. Its job is to convert. Its job is to convert a text into a double. So it does two things. Number one, it takes something that is in text and gives it to another thing that is in double. So logically, that can happen because for you to transfer, both of them have to be in the same data type. So the try pass here will check if there is something inside the text box. And if the thing that is inside the text box is numeric. So over here, try pass will take txt underscore num1. Fantastic. But txt underscore num1 is the text box. I can't go and take this entire text box. So what do I want about the text box? I want what the individual has typed. In the properties panel here, what controls text display? The thing that controls text display is the text property. So in here, I'm going to say, when you go for the text box, go and look for, using the dot, the text property. So you can see that in here, I'm telling the computer that go for the text box and then go for the text property of the text box. The text property of the text box is what the user has typed. So when you go for it, first of all, make sure there is something inside. Second of all, make sure that that thing is numeric. And if both of these things are true, then go and put it inside the variable I created that is called num1. So if it is able to do that, this would evaluate and say true. Now, and also, so I don't only want you to do this for num1, and also do the same thing for num2. Now, if this side is true and this side is true, then it means that the user has entered something, and the thing in which the user entered is numeric. Hence, I can enter here with pride and say sum is equal to num1 plus num2. Then I can go and say the label I have over here, I should go and pick it up and change the answer over here to whatever answer I have typed. But the problem is, what did I call the label? Because I can't just go for it. If you have to go for something, you have to know the name of the thing. If I just shout, hey, student, that doesn't work out. I have to know which of you's name I have to mention. For example, Movado, since he's not here today, I can mention his name. So in here, I will have to click on this one. And then in here, I'll mention the name I gave the label, which is txt answer. But this code, again, refers to the entire label. What do I want about the label? Note that I can change anything about the label. I can change the color, I can change the font size, I can change the word, I can do a lot of things. But what I want to do is to change whatever that is inside this text property. And I want that thing to be sum is equal to join sum dot to string. Remember that sum is a double, so I can't attach a double and a string together. So I'll use sum to string to convert it from a double to a string. Now, in the case else, whereby the user has entered something which is not a number or has not entered anything at all, so maybe he didn't enter something here or maybe he didn't enter something here, I have to tell the user that, hey, enter something that is correct. So I'll use a message box dot show, and then in here I'll say, please enter a valid number. Now remember, a message box has things in which it goes with. So what type of input is my message box going to take? What type of input is my message box going to reveal? It is going to reveal an input error. So this is the title of the error message that will come. Do I want any buttons over there? The user is not supposed to do anything, so I'll just say the only button I want is OK. And do I want an icon? Yes, I want an icon. The message box icon should be for error, because I'm not telling the person any information. I'm giving him an error. With that, I have finished my code. With that, I have finished my code. And when I run my application, I have no errors. My code runs perfectly. I have the interface popping up here. And if I go on to type 12 here and 12 here and click here, it tells me that my sum is 24. If I go on and remove the 12 here and I click, it gives me a nice message that tells me that I've entered some invalid number. At the top here, it tells me that my input is incorrect. And we can see that the button which I said should show OK is here for me to press OK for it to go away. If I type the 12 here and I remove the 12 down here and I click, it gives me an error again. If I type over here and I click, it gives me an error again. But if I type something in the two locations, then I have no what? Error showing for me again. Do we understand? Any questions? Any questions, please?
Sir, please, can you explain the try pass again?
Oh, okay. Any other question? But I thought you said you did all the theory. So what happened? Oh, this was not part of the theory.
No. It seems your approach looks different from what he taught us. He didn't teach us anything like that. So I just want you to talk about the information in the brackets of the try pass.
Hey, okay. Then tell me the approach you use, so that I'll use that one and be free.
We didn't do anything about error, like correct you showing an error or something. The only thing that we know about is the passing from like type casting from maybe from a string to
You didn't do message box and MS box.
No, we had to experiment those things on our own.
Hey, are you sure? The teacher, I know him. I can call him.
Oh, yes, sir. You can call him and
you, no problem. I'll call him the moment the class stops. All right, no problem. Where is the sticker? Mhm. So what you want to know is the try pass, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so whenever you are writing code, especially with the Windows interface, you realize that you have to deal with error handling. To be honest with you, today is more of us having an introduction to the course instead of the terms of going through what was supposed to be done or what has been done. But it is always best for you to handle or manage errors whenever you are dealing with code. Yes. So the idea is this: I have to transfer information. Ideally, ideally, the information in which the user types in this box here and this box there, all of those informations that are typed in there are all strings. The data type I have over here is a double. I cannot convert a string and a double correctly. I can't do that. It can't happen. So for a second, let me just remove the code in which we have over here. So the code in which we have over here, I have removed it temporarily and stored it in the notepad of the screen. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say in here that dim number, okay, so I've created a new variable as a integer. That's fine. Okay. Now, this new variable in which I'm going to create it as an integer, I'm going to use try pass. Okay. So in here, I'm going to say if integer dot try pass. Now, in here, I'm going to put in the method and the action that should precede the try pass. So in here, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. And then over here, I'm going to say comma, and I'm going to put number over here. But in our case, this 1, 2, 3 here is the information the person has typed into the form. So instead of me typing the 1, 2, 3 here, I'll type the information the person typed into the text box. What the person typed into the text box can be found in txt underscore num1. Not only in txt underscore num1, but when you go into txt underscore num1, you can see that on the screen, it tells me all the things that I can do with txt underscore num1. But what I want from txt underscore num1 is the text property. So that will give me what the person has typed. Very important. Now, if what the person has typed if what the person has typed is correct, then I'm going to say message box into bracket passed successfully. Now, if it didn't do it successfully, then we would say it failed. Else, I'll have an else statement here so that I can handle the failure too. So passed, failed. Just so that we understand what we are doing. Now, just so that we give a more clear meaning, I'll use the ampersand here to join the number so that we know that the number has successfully been passed into the variable. So when I go to my screen and I launch my application again, it will load. There are no errors. It loads successfully. Here's my application on my screen. I've collapsed everything there. So this is my application. And then in here, if I type it and I click the submit button, the pass has what? Failed. If I didn't bring the try pass and I typed it, my entire program is going to crash. Please, my charger is going off. Let me pick the charger and come back right. Now, can you hear me?
Sir, we can hear you.
Okay, so you can see that I am getting an error message over here. Now, if I didn't bring the try pass, my entire program will crash. So the try pass will handle that error and then give a suitable response for me so that my program will not what? Crash. My program will not what? Stop. It will just continue running. Now, if I type the correct thing, so if I type 1, 2, 3 here, the program takes it and notices that, oh, I can convert this one into an integer. So it is okay. So you can see that it's showing me that try pass successful, and it is showing me the 1, 2, 3 on my screen that I have successfully been able to pass that information. Error handling is a very, very big thing. All of us use applications, and sometimes you see that when you're using some software and you do something, the whole application will crash or will fall or will not continue to run or would cease running for some reason in which you don't even know. So handling of the error is very, very important. Now, back to the code in which we're doing. All I was saying in the code in which we're doing was that I have some code. The code in which I have to put double values in num1 and num2. Now, these values I'm putting in num1 here and num2 here are coming from txt number1 and the text property of txt number1. What is txt number1? Txt number1 is this thing which I'm shaking over here. The text property is whatever the person types. So technically, I'm telling the computer that go for the text property and what the person has typed and put it inside here. But only put it here if that thing is of type double. If it is not of type double, then tell the person that you have made a mistake. So go and correct your mistake. That's all I'm saying. Is it well explained to you now?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, please? Any questions? No questions. I always like
Yes, sir. No question.
I always like it when students don't have any questions. It's so nice. So nice. So let's have an example of, so this is an example of a simple application to add two numbers. Let's have another application. Let's try something else. So I'm going to try another application. And in this application, I do not need number 2. I do not need number 1. I just need this one and this one here. I don't even need answer. So I have a simple application that looks like this. And I'm going to type my code into my button again. Now in here, I'm going to type the following code. Try. Now try always goes with catch. So try and catch. Try and catch is a very interesting piece of code. What you are telling the computer is that you have a sandbox environment or a safe environment. Do this. If there's an error, you tell me the error, but don't close my application. Let my application continue to run. Okay? If there is an error, don't close my application. Don't close it. Let it continue to run. Let it continue to run. So in here, I'm going to say dim number as integer is equal to integer dot try pass or dot pass. Let me not use try pass. Let me just use pass. And then in here, I would say text input, or what I call it was txt underscore num1 dot text. So with this, I'm not using the try pass. So what this will do is it will take whatever that it is here, convert it into an integer, and give it directly to my variable over here. So this one, whatever it is, to try and convert it and put it over here. So if that is done successfully, then I can have a message box which says message box dot show, and then in here I'm going to put converted integer or converted number successfully. The good. The title of my message would be success. The type of button on it would be OK. And then the type of icon on it would be, I think it should be info, or yeah, it should be info because there is nothing complex about this one. So the message I'll put here is message box. Icon dot info. Perfect. So I have a message box over here that I can showcase to the individual. Now, in here, if anything goes wrong, if an error occurs, if something goes wrong, it will come in here. So we will tell the computer that what you have caught, so message box, dot show into brackets. And what am I showing? I am showing an unexpected error has occurred. Now, over here, what the computer does, which the try and catch is, the idea of it is so marvelous and it helps your coding a lot, is that whatever error that is caught is going to be kept in this exe over here. So over here, when I come and I say and join exe.message, I am telling you that whatever error that you got, the message that came with that error, so that I can debug it, add it to this occurrence has occurred over here. And then when you're finished doing that, go and bring all of these things here. So in our case, this place is going to be error. Over here, it is going to be okay. But over here, I'm not going to have the icon for info. I'll have the icon for error. So I can run this code. If I run this code, it brings up my box for me again, beautifully. In here, I put in 12 and I click. It tells me the number is converted successfully. Over here, instead of me typing 12, I type in QERT, the QWERTY. And then I click on this, and then I have an error which explodes in my face, and it is showing me over here, and the entire program has ended, and all haywire is going, as we can see. So it did not do its job by popping up with the error because I wasn't specific enough as to what error message it should do or what error it should not prompt and collapse my entire program. So that's fine. In here, the wonderful thing about try and catch, the wonderful thing about it is that try and catch one second. I know you have an error, stop. So the wonderful thing about catch is that you can have multiple catches in your system for the multiple errors in which you be getting. So in here, I could say catch exe as a format exception. So in here, I can give the same message over here. But this time, I am catching a specific error. And that error is if the individual has typed in an invalid number format. Please enter valid format. I don't have to bring the error because I know that's the error, but you let me just leave the error there so that we'll see what message comes up. So when I click here again, I get a pop-up again. Let me clear the screen so that we can all see the pop-up very well. So I have the pop-up here again. And then in here, I type in, let's see, QWERTY, and I click on this. It's giving me the pop-up again. It shouldn't give me the pop-up again. What's going on? Invalid error. Oh, okay. I know why it is doing that. Let me see. Stop. Over here, instead of me to use the join, I use times. So I think that is why it is going all haywire like that. So let me run this again. Let's put in the QWERTY over here. And then boom, you can see that it's telling me that invalid format, please enter the error. And we can see the error here, input string was not in correct format. You see, so I have this format error over here showing for. So my program will not crash. It will not stop entirely. It will just show the error and continue to run. One beautiful thing too about the try and catch is that there is also another section of it, which is called final. Final means that after you have done the try, after you have done the catch, over here, like after everything is done, what do you want to do again? In this case, I want to say txt num1 dot clear. Okay, so when I come back to my code over here and I run my code and I come in here like this and I type this in here, it gives me this. When I type QWERTY in here and it runs, it shows me this. But you can see that it clears everything from here because of the final. So if everything is done, finally, it will do this. Regardless of whatever happens, it will do it for you. So here I can have other exceptions so that if a user provides different forms of errors, I can handle any form of error which comes my way. No matter the error, I can handle. Note that this will be very important for us in which we are looking to make connections to the database. So over here, we'll use try and catch and say, if we cannot connect to the database, give us an error. If our SQL statement is what is wrong, give us an error. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Are we all okay? Do we all understand?
Yes, sir.
So let's take a final example. And then we can go away because today is Friday. Over here, I'm going to copy this and paste it. Over here, let me stop this. So stop it. Stop. And then here, I'll change the text property to number 2. And then over here, I'll change this property here to txt underscore number 1. See, we already have number 1. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. So txt underscore number 2. Okay. Perfect. So I'll click in here again. And again, I'll pause a bit so that when you guys have your code, you can see the screen and everything. Then I'll wipe it off because I want to type my code. And in here, I'm going to type a specific code. I'm going to redo everything I did in a different way, but this time I'm going to use the try and catch. So in here, I'm going to say try. And I'm going to say try div number 1 as an integer, and it should be equal to integer dot pass into brackets txt number 1 dot text. Now, obviously, just to save some time, I'll copy this and say this should be txt number 2. And then over here, I would say dim result as integer should be equal to num1 slash num2. So I'm using division over here. Now, if everything goes on well, I'm going to say message box into bracket. Oh, before the bracket, I need to break dot show. And then in here, I would say the result, semicolon, and then I will join using the AND result, comma, the message, of course, is going to be, the title of the message is going to be success, comma, the icon button in which we want is going to be .ok. And then the message icon is going to be information. Now, here, you see that whenever you do, before you do the division, we have to check if the person entered the valid number. So here I can say catch, EXE, as, and here I would say as format exceptions. And then in here, I can put a nice message box here and tell the user that, oh, the number in which he entered is not a valid number. So here you can say, please enter valid numbers. Of course, it is not a success. It is going to be an error. And of course, over here, or we can specify the error specifically and say it is an input error. It is an input error. Then over here, I'll have my message box still being okay, but my error message is not going to be info, it's going to be what? Error. Now, any number, you cannot divide any number by 0. It is a mathematical error. So over here, I can say catch EXE as a division error. So division exception. Then in here, I can put in a message box and say that, oh, you cannot divide a number by what? 0. Then over here, I can say that any other error that comes that I have not thought of, just tells the person that an error has occurred and then we will join in ex.message to tell the person the specific error that the computer has identified. And here we would say math error. And then over here, we would say an error, just a general error. So now here, you can see that with these things, I am starting to check specific things. I'm starting to check everything in which the user is doing. If there is this error, I tell him. If this error, I tell him. It's a specific errors being targeted. And if I don't even know the error, I can then just go and tell him that, okay, this is what I think. I can even go further and say final. And then in here, I would say txt number 1 dot text dot clear, and then txt number 2 dot what? Clear. So that after it does any computation, it will just clear the spaces for us. It wouldn't have anything there. Ladies and gentlemen, when we appear here, someone is asking, why is it an error input? Why is it an input error? It is an input error because the user didn't enter a valid number. So whatever input over here, you have input. Let me see. Let me launch this application and show you. So in here, if I type 12 here, it's correct, the number. If over here I come and type John, John is not an M number. So I have an input error. The input in which I am typing is wrong. I hope, Mr. Bernard, you understand that. So that is why it is an input error. And over here, if I come and type 10 here and I put 0 over here, it is a mathematical error because you can't divide any number by 0. So you see that the specific errors are showing for me. Proper application, right? Are there any questions before we get out of here? If there are no questions, yes.
So I just wanted to know your indentation styling. Is it for clarity or is it required?
It's required. Hey, Abrantie. It's required. When you go to type everything in one line, like we are living in the Middle Ages, hell no. It is highly required. Yes.
Okay. So it means like if after try the next line starts from the same line, it won't work, right?
Oh no, it will work, but it's not like Python in which it wouldn't work, but just for clarity.
Exactly. So yeah, that's why I was asking, is it required or is it for clarity? Well, I know Python without it
let me
won't
put
work,
it let me put it this way. For you, it is required.
Okay, sure.
For you, it is required because I know you people. So for you, it is required.
Okay, sure.
Any other question from the group? Oh, if there are no other questions, then God bless you all. Thank you for showing up. And we pray in God's name that we would meet again next week. I think after next week, then we can see if we can push our class to Tuesday. But next week will have to be on Friday online again.
Is there anything you wanted to check on or check out before our next meeting?
Our next meeting, we are going to delve into databasing and how we can connect our application into a database, which means that you guys will have to go and install a Microsoft server, the Microsoft database server. You have to install it.
Sir, please, can we get the recorded version, please?
You can get the recorded version.
Please, thank you.
Thank you all for showing up. We'll meet again next week.
Okay, sure.